Story 1. Food service. Everyone looks down on fast food workers, but most people could not keep up in the middle of the lunch rush. Story 2. Custodial. I train new custodians when we hire them. I teach them how to perform my shift step by step. By the end of the shift, they are completely exhausted but tend to feel they can handle it. I really enjoy the look on their face when I remind them that there were two of us doing the shift. Then I tell them that tomorrow I will have them do the entire shift by themselves while I catch up on some cleaning I do not get to every day. About 1 in 3 of them do not come back after the second shift. Story 3. My husband is a blue-collar construction worker, so I will say construction. From the way he looks when he gets home, I know many people could not do it. Story 4. Any age group of childcare. I work in an infant room and find that most parents seriously lack general understanding of what we actually do on a daily basis. We are most thought of as glorified babysitters who get to play with kids all day, and while that is partly true, we have very real and serious standards and rules we have to follow while keeping 12 babies alive at a 2-to-12 ratio. Story 5. People do not realize how brutal outdoor labor is until they are drenched in sweat by 9 a.m. Elder care takes an emotional and physical toll that is intense, yet it is often overlooked. Teaching is another challenging profession. Everyone thinks they could do it until they are dealing with 30 children and receive no appreciation. Society takes many of these jobs for granted until they are the ones doing them. Story 6. I used to work in the fishing industry. It was not uncommon to work hard physically for 18 to 22 hours a day, with few breaks only interrupted by quick meals. Sleep was considered anything from 20 minutes to 3 hours a day. Standing on my feet while a ship moved, processing fish, packing, and icing into boxes weighing more than 50 kilograms. This was done 7 days a week for periods of 1.5 to 3 months. I do not know how I managed to do it then, but I definitely feel my back reminding me of it at times. Yet most people think we were just overpaid to sail around and have a cruise. Story 7. I worked at a very busy airport for 3 years. Standing on the black tarmac for 8 hours on a hot and humid Florida summer day with no breeze is not for the weak. Bonus points if it rains and you get steamed like a crab. I started at $10.50 an hour. Story 8. Labor jobs. Many literally make daily life or even society possible. Yet, many jobs are looked down upon, while most office workers are considered literal wastes of space who work on average 2.5 to 4 hours a day. Story 9. Factory work. You only put in screws. How hard could that be? You cut and print boxes. How hard could that be? Also, retail, if only because people underestimate how genuinely difficult others can be if they think they are somehow above you. Story 10. Teaching and managing more than 30 children, while attempting to instruct and simultaneously ensuring not to say anything that might offend them or upset their parents. All without any administrative support. Story 11. You do not know stress until you are a server at a fancy restaurant with high standards, and the new host seats you too many tables at the same time. Story 12. Most hunter sales jobs are challenging. I have done a variety of jobs mentioned here. Landscaping, janitorial work, server at a busy Olive Garden, sales, and bank teller. Sales jobs are often discouraging. Most products you sell are low quality and working on commission only. There is a lot of work with nothing to show if a deal falls through. It is difficult to take proper vacations and requires constant follow-up on cold leads. At least with most other jobs, you have something to show at the end of the day. Most people do not last long in sales. Story 13. Project management. You are responsible for ensuring that everything gets done, but no one directly reports to you. Story 14. Line cook during a lunch rush. It is madness trying to keep up with all the different orders and yet somehow not mess up the food. Story 15. Teaching involves managing 30 different personalities, grading for hours, and still being blamed for everything. Everyone talks about summers and holidays off, but few acknowledge these challenges. Story 16. Most jobs exist because they are too demanding. Retail was difficult because of difficult customers, poor management, intense work schedules, no guaranteed vacation, and minimal pay. Story 17. Youth sports reference. I love sports and participate occasionally, but some parents should not have children. Story 18. Service industry. I think every person should complete 6 months of mandatory service as a server in a restaurant or retail shop. Story 19. Teaching. I challenge you to try it for a week in a high-risk school before complaining about our summer vacations. Story 20. Sanding and refinishing a wood floor. Changing the back tire on a motorcycle. Drywall and mudding. I will never do any of those myself again. It is worth whatever it costs to have someone else do them correctly and quickly. Story 21. I did many corporate jobs, including higher level and better paid ones by now. I am confident that by far the most stressful and unrewarding corporate career point is that of the project manager. You are randomly and regularly reassigned between projects and teams you barely have time to understand, let alone become comfortable with zero control over the choice of people executing them. Yet, you are somehow accountable for the execution of all those projects and bear the blame from senior leadership if any issues arise or delivery is at risk or behind schedule. You are accountable to senior management for people on your team who think you are useless. You wake up before others, knowing it will be a 12-hour day of taking verbal abuse on behalf of those people. You get paid for enduring a never-ending cycle of stress affecting your health and private life, being the person everyone blames whenever anything goes wrong, and receiving almost no perks. I was in that role in the past and I hated it the most. Story 22. Running a rotisserie at Costco. I trained 4 people in a month. No one lasts long there. It's hot and non-stop. Depending on the store size, they can cook over 600 chickens a day. A full load every 30 minutes from 8:30 a.m. until 7:30 p.m., at least at the busy store I worked in. The store I am currently at does half that in sales, and I am pushing their people to improve because they don't care when they run out and refuse to cook full loads. I come from a time when being out of chickens was a write-up. This new store I am at is very meh. All is well. Story 23. Fast food may be considered unskilled, but there is definitely some level of skill required, just not the kind you will learn in school. Story 24. Middle management. Everyone loves to hate them, and they get all the blame from upper management. I worked labor jobs in my youth and used to think I was tired after work, but I could still play video games or sit and have a beer with friends. Now that I am middle management in an office, it is mentally and emotionally draining because of the loads of stress and the constant need to make decisions. When I get home, I do not have the mental capacity to do anything. Story 25. Communications. Most of you are poor communicators, but studying communications is often considered useless here in the United States. Story 26. Solar installation in the tropics in summer. 40+ degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and over 90% humidity on shiny corrugated iron roofs with surface temperatures exceeding 80 degrees Celsius on hands and knees, wrestling heavy panels 2 stories up in the wind, going into often uninsulated roof spaces to run cabling, usually around the 50 to 60 degrees Celsius, 150 degrees Fahrenheit mark, dodging spiders, snakes, rats, and possums. Cash jobs, $1,000 plus per day with accommodation and meals provided, but still, no thank you. Story 27. Any job that involves working with the public, such as retail, can be challenging. People often think they can speak to you however they want, in ways they would not use with others. I worked at McDonald's in my youth and would tell customers, "You wouldn't dare say that to me in the street, because you know what would happen to you." This usually stopped them unless they were intoxicated. Then they would start acting tough. People can be very rude in public, and many do not realize how poorly they present themselves. I was essentially paid very little to endure abuse throughout the day and night. Story 28. Everybody thinks they can be a teacher. I mean, how hard could it be? You get all that time off. Teaching is a very difficult job to do well. Story 29. The gas station cashier is often misunderstood. People think the cashier is stupid, but it is usually the customer, especially when they ask for unreasonable things or have nonsensical conversations. Story 30. Law is often thought to involve, at most, speaking well on your feet. The idea is that you pull random information out of nowhere in court. The job is extremely difficult to do correctly and requires intelligence, attention to detail, thorough preparation and organization, courage, and emotional intelligence on many levels. Many tough individuals would collapse if they had to analyze complex issues and defend their points against hostile adversaries and judges. Story 31. I DJ as a side hustle, and it is hard work. I refuse to do it unless I get paid decently. A good disc jockey is really skilled at reading crowds and knowing what fits the mood. Especially in clubs, people will let you know if you are not good. No set ever goes as planned, and you have to adjust quickly to what the crowd wants. You absolutely cannot mess up by making the music stop or go completely offbeat. Again, the crowd will let you know if you make a mistake. There are no bathroom breaks or downtime during a set. You have only a few minutes or seconds to move on to something else. Add in dealing with entitled people who demand to hear their requests and drunks who get near your equipment or distract you, and it is not for the faint of heart. Story 32. Basement waterproofing. I have done a fair amount of construction work, and that was the most physically demanding task. Story 33. Environmental health and safety. You are the supervisor. It is your job to take care of your people and hold them accountable so they are healthy enough to do the job. I am not the safety police, and I do not have all day to police your people, which is your responsibility. I am here to conduct audits, identify risks we are not controlling or have overlooked, answer questions, and communicate risks to higher-level management. This ensures you have the resources to do your job safely and have people available to perform the work. If I have to supervise a manager or team lead closely, it means I do not have time to do my job. Story 34. Manager. Many self-motivated people get the job but do not know what to do with people who need external motivation. Story 35. I see a lot here that I feel are accurately estimated by the general public, so I'll say a simple but true one. My administrative job. It looks like a monkey could do it. How hard can emailing be? It's like line cooks or dishwashers, totally taken for granted, but it takes actual effort. Story 36. Re-roofing buildings with a total tear-off often involves surprises, such as sheathing that needs to be replaced, crumbling soffits, or having to get another box of nails. Carrying 4 squares of shingles up ladders is very tiring. Story 37. I'll say any physical labor job. I never had a physical job in my life, and I took a job as a meter reader for the power company. I didn't have to do a lot of hard labor, but I walked upwards of 15 miles per day. Those first few days of training left me winded. Story 38. Food service, especially fast food or fast casual. People who say they do not deserve minimum wage should work at a pizza place in the summer or at a McDonald's during a dinner rush, from noon until closing. If they still think it is not difficult, have them work as a line cook at a place like Applebee's or a similar chain. Story 39. Retail. I'm surprised I regained any tolerance for humans after 5 years of that. No one prepared me for how many bodily fluids of all kinds and orifices I would have to encounter and clean up working in the clothing department of Target. Bodily solids, too. Full, discarded diapers placed between racks and denim walls. Screaming, running children with no apparent guardian in sight. It was like being paid minimum wage to do customer service, babysitting, hospitality, and custodian duties in a deinstitutionalized madhouse. Story 40. Package handler for a Federal Express ground preload. A couple of years ago, I was a sort manager for a large ground station. I don't know how some of those handlers manage to do it, especially during the holiday season, because even the best stations are barely getting through the day's workload on time. Horrible hours, zero downtime, unloading and loading 130-pound Amazon dressers, tires, and boxes of dog food all shift. Drivers complaining to them nonstop about issues they cannot control. Then their supervisors reprimanded them for every metric imaginable. It is borderline slave labor, if I am being honest. Story 41. Wedding DJ, you must play the best song in the world right now. Keep the bride happy, the parents happy, and the semi-attractive, drunk, obnoxious girl who is being very vocal about your current performance while you remain upbeat and on schedule with the next activity. Story 42. Professor, medical researcher. It looks easy but requires 10 to 12 years of college, competing for grant funding, developing new research questions, designing and testing experiments, meeting publishing deadlines, and managing staff effectively. Story 43. Payroll in countries with complex employment, tax, and retirement laws is not just clicking a button. It is a thankless task until you make a mistake. Often, it is actually the system or your manager who made the error. Story 44. Factory, warehouse labor, and retail or customer service workers will forever be underestimated and underappreciated. Story 45. Customer service requires much more patience and energy than people realize. It is genuinely exhausting, and you often endure abuse for situations where there is nothing you can do except be the person getting yelled at. I once had a customer literally scream at me because they violated the requirement to maintain the return policy, broke a $5,000 television by violating that requirement, and I had to refuse the return. Story 46. Crown molding. Building an outdoor deck was easy compared to crown molding. I will pay a journeyman finisher next time if there is one. Story 47. Medical ultrasound. It looks easy to do, but it is very hard to do correctly and it strains your arms. I used to do oil field welding, and medical scanning damaged my shoulders much more than welding steel. Story 48. Registered nurse. Everyone just criticizes you, saying, "The nurse will do it." And then you have to go home after 12.5 hours of caring for sick and possibly dying people, such as children with cancer in my case, and then be normal and cheerful at dinner. People get upset when you are tired on your day off and they have been waiting to spend time with you. Story 49. Steadicam and boom operating. Oh, it is only a camera on a suspension. You do it. It is just a tiny microphone on a stick. Hold my boom for a full master shot. Story 50. Putting on or being part of a musical or other show involves many hours spent both in rehearsal and at home, during Tech Week, and then performing the actual show. After it ends, you may never work with that cast again, never play that part again, never hear those inside jokes with your scene partner again. My mental state is always unsettled after closing a show, and many people do not understand the effort involved or what it feels like when something that has been a huge part of your life for so long simply comes to an end. Story 51. Painting a wall sounds super easy, but it takes a lot of work to make it look right and not like something rushed or sloppy. Story 52. Sales, particularly industrial sales with a complex product. Everyone else thinks you just smile and be friends. Going through the request for proposal process, endlessly following up on small details, believing in the process that takes months, if not years, all the while everyone is looking at you like, just tell the customer to buy now what we have in stock. And anytime the customer makes a mistake, it is your fault. Story 53. Cleaning, care work, police work. These professions are often looked down on but are very tough and receive no thanks. Story 54. Video game developer. People watch movies and understand that making movies is difficult. For some reason, game players think they know how to create video games. Story 55. Roofing. I did it the summer right after COVID-19 while trying to get back on my feet. I earned $20 per hour. The workdays were usually short because it was too hot to keep working by 1 or 2 p.m. The shingles were so abrasive they caused my arms to bleed, and I couldn't wear long sleeves because of the heat. I would get home after work, take a shower, and my forearms were bleeding. I calculated how much I made after taxes and realized I was bleeding in the shower after work every day for about $80. Story 56. Digging out lawns for pipe work or gravel pathways manually involves moving much more soil than expected. Story 57. In my experience as someone who has worked over 30 widely varying jobs in different industries, most of them. Story 58. Sex work is very hard on mental health and many other aspects of life. Even if you are of strong and sound mind, it is hard work. I am allowed to say this without someone telling me to just quit. No, I enjoy it, I am good at it, and it is the only industry I am familiar with. It is survival. However, being invalidated for saying it is hard by someone who has never done it is unacceptable behavior. Story 59. Dog grooming. Those who tried to trim their dogs during the COVID-19 lockdown soon shed genuine tears for the return of their dog groomer. Story 60. Deliveries. I had an unfortunate experience with a local courier company when I was between jobs over Christmas and New Year. I lasted 4 days. It was hell on earth, and I also think I have irrevocably damaged my car's engine from the repeated stopping and starting of the car. Story 61. Grocery store cashier. Worked there during college and it was very challenging. Standing for 8 hours straight, memorizing produced codes, dealing with expired coupons, and having to smile while someone argues that their 2-year-old expired coupon should still work. Story 62. I swear everyone thinks they would be a great creative, especially since generative artificial intelligence became mainstream. Design is not just using tools. It is mainly knowing the rules and trends, solving problems, and understanding a brief. It is both technical and intellectual. It takes time to be good at it, even if you are artsy or have ideas. Story 63. Just because I have done it enough in information technology, you wouldn't think so, but the amount of misunderstanding when it comes to technology in a technology-filled world is exhausting. Even the simplest questions are met with, I don't know what that means. Where's that button? You were telling me you don't know what button to press to turn your computer on? When it comes to the more complicated things, my search skills using Google are just better than yours. Story 64. Pouring concrete is difficult, especially on a 5-person crew doing form work, hardscapes, pavers, bricks, blocks, bluestone, or any kind of masonry work. It feels like a job they would have people do in prison gangs. However, there is a certain unspoken camaraderie among laborers, a shared experience of the working man's plight. It is meaningful to know that your work will be seen and used long after you are gone. Some child 150 years in the future might wonder who laid that stone or poured that slab. I know I did. That kind of work is tough and not something you can do forever, but it is rewarding. Story 65. Tour guide. All the downsides of your average customer service job. Because these customers are on vacation, any little thing that does not go exactly as they expected is perceived as ruining their trip. They also do not actually read what they have signed up for, and their expectations come from some other tour they went on in a completely different location. Be prepared to fail to meet their expectations frequently. Additionally, they have many opinions on how to improve a tour, assuming you can do whatever you want whenever you want with no consequences or regard for things like private property. Story 66. Housekeeping at hotels. I did it for 2 summers during college, and it completely changed how I treat hotel rooms now. The amount of disgusting things people do, the physical toll on your body, and trying to clean 15 to 20 rooms perfectly in an 8-hour shift is brutal. Story 67. Detailing. Every young person wants to start a detailing business with no experience because they don't realize how much actual work it involves. Beyond the physical labor, there is the business aspect as well, and not everyone is naturally business-minded. I have seen people hired as detailers surprised that they actually have to sweat and put in hard work. Most of the places I detailed did not have air conditioning during 90 to 100 degree Fahrenheit summers. They think it's just wiping down windows and using a machine to wax a car, when in reality it involves dragging a pumice stone over carpet repeatedly in a hot car, wrestling a pressure washer, straining your body through continuous motion, dealing with carpal tunnel, and scrubbing human filth out of cars. Everyone wants to see the end results on social media, but no one wants to acknowledge the hard work that is required. On top of that, detailers are traditionally underpaid unless they become successful business owners. Story 68. Any job, I think. Until you have done it, you cannot possibly know what it is like. Just because you go shopping every day does not mean you know everything a salesperson or cashier is required to do daily. Just because you observe a waiter doing their job does not mean you know what is happening behind the scenes. And just because you were once a student, you cannot begin to grasp how much work teachers put in before and after lessons. I have done all 3, and people are very quick to tell you how easy your job is. 3 different jobs, 3 different kinds of challenges, but based on my own experience, I would never pretend somebody else's job is easy. Story 69. People logistics. Dispatcher, service supervisor, logistics, manpower coordinator. It is difficult to get a clear picture of customer requirements while working with diverse personalities and their varying willingness to cooperate. Often, there is insufficient personnel, requiring someone to work overtime. People tend to dislike and distrust what others say. A good leader stands a strong chance of being taken advantage of. A bad leader will crush team spirit and cause many issues. Story 70. Offshore workers. There are some people who have it easy, well-paid, maybe even overpaid, working on a rotation with low work demand. On the opposite side, there are those who are overworked nonstop. They face a lot of pressure and accountability, and a simple mistake can lead to a wellbore release that could be the next Piper Alpha or Deepwater Horizon disaster. They are essentially working on a poorly managed potential hazard, often with people who would not be employed elsewhere. Ego and pride tend to be the loudest and strongest authority on site. Your integrity is constantly tested to do the right thing, as customer representatives and other companies on site care more about getting home, staying under budget, and meeting deadlines. They will shortcut anything if you allow it. If you get hurt or something goes wrong, you can be hours away from help reaching you and getting you to a safe place. Working outside of the European Union can be risky. Government joint ventures take over and impose unpredictable scenarios. You have to decide what risks you can accept and make decisions accordingly. The job also takes a huge toll on families. The money is not always worth it because workers often never get to spend it, lose it in divorces, or overspend to compensate for their absence at home. The culture is poor. It is like being in a playground full of immature adults. Friends have lost their jobs simply because they refused to deviate from their safe work instructions, and the customer decided they were no longer wanted. It is a strange industry. It does not pay what it used to or should, except in specific roles or locations. The amount of politics involved is excessive. Story 71. When you forget what it was like to be a student, your children will probably be upset with you. School can be a challenging environment that may contribute to bullying, depression, anxiety, and other difficulties. Story 72. Nearly all public-facing jobs, whether in person, over the phone, or through a screen, especially food service. If I ruled the world, everyone would spend 1 year waiting tables. We would all benefit. I mean the full experience. Greeting hungry and travel-weary people, taking their ridiculous questions and orders, dealing with the chaotic but hardworking kitchen staff, carrying food to tables, refilling drinks, filling trays of condiments, refilling table condiments, shouting into the freezer, smiling through tip snubs, splitting checks at the last second when the table has to leave after dining for 2 hours, taking slurred orders, and more. Story 73. Almost every job. This may be the truest comment I have ever read about humans. The less someone knows, the more stubbornly they believe it. It is in our nature to assume we are brilliant. Things are easy. We are wrong 99.999% of the time. Story 74. Information technology. Sure, on paper it sounds easy, but try fielding over 100 calls in the course of a week for the same issue, where everyone has done their own fiddling around to try and fix it without calling, and you have to figure out what they have broken so you can fix it and then resolve the original problem. Or try being the sole source of a physical security access asset like a security key for an entire company. Or people calling you for audio-visual issues because, whatever, it's the same thing. Or anything to do with printers where the answer is not, throw it out the window. Information technology is a thankless job that many people look down on and take for granted. I cannot even begin to tell you how many people would criticize my job to my face as I was helping them get back to functional. People would literally tell me I was not doing real work as I was crawling under their desk to fix some cable they yanked out by kicking their feet. Story 75. Early childhood educator. As soon as you mention you work with children under 5, people immediately comment about being a babysitter. Running after 15 toddlers for 9 hours a day is no joke. Story 76. I underestimated working at a dog daycare. Some of the fights can get intense. Depending on the daycare, you encounter some pretty aggressive dogs sometimes that are off-leash and can only be handled by certain people. After working at these places, I am not the biggest fan and would not take my dog to one that is not home-based with a good referral. Story 77. IT customer support. Yeah, they aren't the systems guys. Yeah, they aren't the developers. But surprisingly, They handle the most complex IT problems with total ease, even involving completely tech-illiterate customers. After that, they relay specific information to the related departments, who might actually automate some processes that were previously unconsidered. Nothing but respect from me. I am a developer. Story 78. Can work. Many people think it is just wiping people's asses, but it is so much more than that. I have been doing this for 12 years, and I cannot tell you the physical and mental toll it has taken on me. We end up being their shoulder to cry on. We see a lot of death, and we see so much more than the average person would ever imagine. This is just the short answer. Story 79, bit of an edge case, but laying carpet. I have done construction and landscaping, and the 2 years cutting carpet out and installing carpet were by far the most difficult. Story 80, pharmacist or pharmacy technician. The majority of the public believes we mainly just put pills in a bottle, but the truth is most of our time is spent communicating with the patient's insurance and primary care physicians to ensure their medications are covered. Also, if you cannot multitask 4 to 5 things at one time while verifying safe dosages, then you likely will not last long. Some days are slow depending on your store, but most days are demanding. Story 81. Working at a library is very different from what everyone thinks. People assume we just read all day, but that is not true. First, you are obviously not supposed to just sit and read during your shift. There is a lot of information to process and remember, many computer programs and systems to learn. On top of all that, everyone often acts like you have the easiest job ever. Also, you would be surprised how many libraries are actually toxic places filled with gossip and politics, especially among management. I would never go back, at least not for $10 an hour. Story 82. I'll give an unpopular one, project manager. Everyone agrees that it is a worthless job. Yet when you have a bad project manager or none at all, everybody does their own work and nothing works properly. Even bad project managers have some merit. They are usually people tasked with several contradicting tasks by their bosses. Bad management usually comes from the top. Story 83. Being a radio disc jockey. With automation, a lot easier. Everything is more planned out. Still trying to hit the post, talking up to the vocals. If you're talking, make it short and sweet. Don't trip over your words. The ability to ad-lib is a must. Knowing your music is important because the countdown to the vocals can be wrong. Have a backup if the next piece of audio does not play. Run the contest, take a transmitter reading, keep checking the log, report any commercial that is out of date or does not play properly, pre-read your copy, and check on the station across the hall. Have the right personality. Have lightning-fast reflexes, be able to edit phone calls quickly, pretend to care about a song you are playing, and make pennies on the dollar. Old school, most of all of that, but keep the music flowing by changing carts after each audio element, editing phone calls together with razor blades and reel-to-reel tape, and be able to use the restroom very quickly. In both of these modes, pray for the show to be over, saying to yourself that you could have done something else that pays more and has better benefits, knowing that there is no other job like it in the world, and thanking God that the station manager lets you do the same thing tomorrow. The worst day is when you make the hard decision to hang up your headphones and get a real job. I know that life. I had it a lot easier than some with automation and never had to use razor blades and tape though. Bosses and management of other industries. That out-of-work disc jockey you hired may be thankful and work hard for you, but his home will always be in radio. You could offer him all the benefits you want, but it is not radio. If he seems a little off, you have to be crazy to work in radio, and it is a sickness without a cure. It's a drug, it's a high. It's radio, and it's all he knows. Story 84. I have seen over a dozen people start growing cannabis, thinking that it is big money for little work and fail within months. Working in a greenhouse during the summer is not easy work by any means. Story 85. Working at a grocery store during the pandemic, when everyone was angry, was challenging. The grocery store was the only place people could go, and there was always a line to get in. Some individuals said things like, "At least you were still working," while they had been laid off and received unemployment benefits that were higher than my earnings. Others threatened us with violence. Story 86. I once had a friend switch out a brand new air filter on his car all by himself after watching a YouTube video because he claimed that the workshop wanted to overcharge him. $30 total, and they did not charge him for consultation fees, just labor. Afterwards, his car kept turning off by itself a few seconds after turning it on. He decided to give up and get it towed to the same workshop. It cost him $80 to get it towed there. According to him, the mechanic just popped his hood, took one good look at the air filter and figured out the problem. He had forgotten to remove the plastic wrapper before installing it. The mechanics there just laughed it off and did not even ask him to pay a cent. Story 87. Folding clothing at stores. I worked at a department store that had tables with a lot of clothing that needed to be constantly folded because people would rummage through the sizes and never fold back any of the clothing. I would spend my entire shifts folding the clothes. My back hurt so much that I had to take ibuprofen before and after my shifts. I left that position after about 3 months. Physically, I just could not do it, and this was in my 20s. I cannot imagine how hard it is to work in the fields and pick fruit. Story 88. Childcare preschool teacher. I did this for 8 years, and I can't tell you how many people I have watched come and go because it is harder than they thought. 1 child is not bad. 2 children are hard but manageable. 16 children with 1 other adult, and they are 2 years old, so you know they are going to be biting and hitting at some point. Plus, you have to help potty train them. Even the older ages, 15 children 4 years of age, by yourself. People do not realize how hard it is. Story 89. Teaching is challenging. Children are not always kind. Parents may not be supportive, and the government holds educators responsible for many societal issues. Time off is often spent grading, preparing lesson plans, and engaging in professional development. Story 90. Receptionists are the backbone of a company. When they are out sick or on vacation, the whole office suffers. This observation comes from a small office and does not speak for large companies or corporations. Story 91. Adult content. Everyone complains, but men consume it and women would like to participate. They are just embarrassed, afraid, or have other reasons. The profits are disproportionately high compared to any other job. Story 92. All I know is that any job like this I worked when I was younger, the beer tasted better at the end of the shift. Story 93. Every job except some of the corporate ones. My friend is an accountant. He has a corporate job that he likes, working 1 week every month. He is at the director level but has no direct reports. He is retained as a subject matter expert, so he reads up on laws when they are passed. Ultimately, all of his recommendations are verified by a third-party subcontracting company, and they never find anything wrong with his work. However, any unskilled labor job requires grit and patience for repetition to get good at it. Story 94. Library positions, particularly clerks who work the front desk, are often misunderstood. Many people imagine the job involves sitting around reading books, occasionally shushing someone, shelving books at a leisurely pace, and dealing only with the nicest, most educated people. However, these are customer service jobs with all the usual challenges, plus many entitled customers who believe they are exempt from rules because they pay taxes, along with a variety of additional responsibilities. The library I worked at averaged over 10,000 items returned per day. Front desk clerks were responsible for processing those returns and checking for damages. 1 person was assigned to the book return at any given time. Duties included setting up accounts, filing library card applications, handling all payments, balancing cash drawers at the end of the day, preparing bank deposits, processing hold requests from patrons wishing to reserve items, keeping shelves organized, preparing materials for reshelving, sometimes doing reshelving, assisting with event setup throughout the year, helping patrons use checkout machines, offering tours of the library, performing cleaning tasks during the day, and maintaining knowledge of frequently changing laws, policies, and regulations related to the job. This included contract laws, particularly those related to minors seeking to sign up for a library card under someone other than a parent, since library card applications are contracts but may not be subject to certain educational exemptions like those at schools. Interviews for shelver and clerk positions were conducted by a 3-person panel. In addition to typical questions such as, "Why do you want to work here? Candidates were asked how they would handle specific situations. Frequently, interviewees responded that such situations would never occur, despite the questions being based on common experiences. Examples included, what would you do if you were helping an upset patron and they threw a book at you? Or, what would you do if you entered the bathroom and found someone passed out with an empty bottle of vodka? Story 95. Teaching. I just became a teacher after working in two completely different fields for most of my career, and it is a lot more work than you would think. Definitely the most work of any job I have ever done. Story 96. People think that teaching very young children is easy and that they are just playing. That is not the case at all. It is also very tiring. I still love it though. Story 97. Marketing. Most companies think anyone can do it. It is just slapping some pictures and words on things. There is actually psychology and science behind great marketing. Story 98. Childcare, especially working with children currently in 2025. I have theories as to why children's behavioral issues are off the charts now. It is an exhausting yet rewarding job. Story 99. Being a 7th and 8th grade teacher in a low-income, very diverse, struggling middle school. Story 100. In-home daycare. Mother did it for 16 years. Licensing is not fun, no days off. You have to have a smile on your face while playing therapist to parents. Occasionally, you do have to legally make that phone call to Child Protective Services. It was cool for me growing up. I either always had someone my age to play with, or I got paid to spray the little ones with the hose like I just won a race after a solid morning watching Eureka's Castle and Blue's Clues. But I also now understand why my mom and grandma quit shortly after I graduated high school and my dad got a massive promotion. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.